The metallic click of the lock seemed to echo the sudden, sickening plunge in Julia Martinez's stomach. Richard Bennett, her boss of 8 months, stood in front of the door, a predatory stillness in his eyes, cutting off her last escape. Months of enduring his wandering hands, the compliments that stretched into an oily menace, the thinly veiled threats about her mother's cancer treatment. All of it had culminated in this locked office. After hours, just the two of them. She'd perfected the art of deflection, sidestepping comments and touches, telling herself it was manageable, that her mother's life depended on it. But as Richard's hot breath ghosted her neck and his hands, uninvited, claimed her waist, Julia knew silence might cost her more than dignity. 8 months. It had begun subtly, compliments lingering too long, Richard standing a fraction too close, his gaze tracing her form instead of her reports. "You should wear skirts more often, Julia. That color truly suits you." Innocent enough, she'd rationalized, pushing down the prickle of discomfort. Was she overreacting? Was this just how corporate America worked? Then came the touches, a hand on her lower back, a fingertip brushing her shoulder, a knee pressing hers under the conference table. Each time, Julia convinced herself it was accidental. A spatial oversight, not what her gut screamed it was. But it always escalated. By the 3rd month, Richard was engineering excuses to keep her late. Important work that invariably involved him closing the distance, his hand finding her arm, her waist, even her hair. "You smell wonderful, Julia. Such a pleasure to work with you. We have a special connection." She started wearing looser clothes, a deliberate shield. She anchored herself behind her desk, concocted elaborate excuses to leave. But he was her boss. He wielded her schedule, her performance reviews, her entire future. More crippling still, he controlled her health insurance, the lifeline funding her mother's $15,000 a month cancer treatment, the one thing keeping her alive. So Julia endured, a practiced smile masking dread, deflecting advances with a gentleness she prayed wouldn't provoke. She had tried once, a desperate whisper to the HR director, implying Richard could be a bit too friendly. The HR veteran, a woman hardened by 2 decades in bureaucracy, had offered a tight smile. "Richard's just old school, dear. A different generation entirely. Try not to take it personally." 2 days later, Richard summoned Julia to his office, the door clicking shut behind her. "I heard you've been spreading rumors, Julia. Disappointed in your lack of loyalty. If you have concerns, you come to me directly." The message seared into her. Complain again, and there would be consequences. She stopped hinting, stopped hoping. She just endured, counting the days until her mother's treatment concluded, until she could finally escape. Tonight, that fragile truce shattered. It was 7 p.m. on a Friday. The office was an echoing void. Julia was gathering her things, anticipating the sweet relief of escape, when Richard's shadow fell over her cubicle. "Julia, my office. I need you to review some documents before Monday." Her heart hammered. "It's Friday night. Can it wait?" His expression tightened, a subtle shift that carried a seismic weight. "No, it can't wait. My office. Now." She followed, a puppet on invisible strings, sinking into the chair opposite his desk, hands clenched in her lap. The door clicked shut, then again, a definitive, sinister lock. Her stomach plummeted. He slid documents across the desk, legitimate reports, quarterly projections. He moved behind her, leaning over her shoulder, his breath scalding her neck, his hand a heavy weight on her shoulder. It slid down her arm, then, deliberately, to her waist. Julia bolted upright, putting distance between them, her voice a strained wire. "I understand the documents. I'll review them Monday," he pursued, cornering her against the desk's hard edge. "Always in such a hurry to leave. One might think you don't enjoy my company. It's late. I should go home." "Why? Got somewhere better to be." His hand rose, brushing her hair from her face, his gaze sickly possessive. "You're so beautiful, Julia. Do you know that? I think about you constantly." "Mr. Bennett, please. This isn't appropriate." He laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Appropriate? Since when do you care about appropriate? You've been leading me on for months, wearing those tight skirts, smiling at me. You know exactly what you're doing." "I haven't been leading you anywhere. I'm just doing my job." "Your job." His hands found her waist again, pulling her closer, a vice. "Your job is to assist me in whatever I need, and right now, I need you to stop playing games." Julia shoved against his chest, tried to twist free, but he was a wall of muscle, the desk a cold, unyielding barrier at her back. "Let me go." Her voice trembled, a pathetic whimper. "Please just let me go, and we can pretend this didn't happen." "Why would I do that?" His mouth was at her ear, his words a venomous whisper. "I've been patient, so patient, waiting for you to come around. But I'm done waiting, Julia. You're going to give me what I want, or you're going to find yourself unemployed. Your choice." Terror, cold and absolute, iced through her veins. This wasn't harassment. This was assault. And she was trapped, alone, in a locked room with a man who saw her consent as optional. "Please don't do this." Tears pricked her eyes. "Please. My mother. I need this job. I need the insurance." "Then you know what you have to do." Richard's hands, relentless, began to slide up her ribs. "Stop fighting. Make this easy for both of us." Then the door opened. Julia hadn't heard a knock, a footstep, nothing. But suddenly, the door Richard had so meticulously locked swung inward, and a man walked in, surveying the scene with an air of absolute ownership. He was tall, impossibly so, draped in a black suit that screamed old money, tailored to a blade's edge. Dark hair, threaded with silver at the temples, framed a face chiseled from harsh angles. His eyes, obsidian dark, swept over the locked room, over Julia, pressed against the desk, arms wrapped around herself, tears pooling over Richard's retreating hands. And then they went lethally, utterly cold. "Get your hands off her." The voice was a deep rumble, a faint Italian accent coloring its absolute calm. But something in its quiet authority made Richard freeze, stepping back from Julia as if burned. "Moretti." Richard's voice, a moment ago so confident, was now careful, almost obsequious. "You're early." The man, Moretti, offered Richard a gaze of pure contempt, then turned to Julia, taking in her coiled posture, the telltale shimmer in her eyes, the locked door. "I'm not early. You just got distracted." His voice remained calm, a deceptive surface over an ocean of controlled fury. His eyes, however, promised violence. "What exactly is happening here, Bennett?" "Nothing." Richard, flustered, adjusted his tie, smoothed his jacket. "Julia and I were just reviewing some documents." Moretti's dark gaze returned to Julia. "Is that true? Were you reviewing documents?" Julia opened her mouth, then closed it. A lifetime of silence, of not making trouble, of protecting her job at all costs warred within her. But in the stranger's unwavering, terrifying eyes, a flicker of something new took root. A wild, impossible hope that someone finally might actually help her. No. Her voice was barely a whisper, a thread of courage in the suffocating air. That's not what was happening. A subtle shift in Moretti's expression. The cold went arctic. He turned back to Richard, a predator scenting blood. Then this is the part where you explain what was actually happening before I make assumptions that are going to be very bad for you. This is private business. Richard tried to reclaim his authority, his voice a desperate bluster. Between me and my employee. We have a meeting scheduled, Moretti. Why don't you wait in the conference room? I'll be with you in 15 minutes. No. The word was simple, absolute. Moretti crossed his arms, his posture radiating coiled power. I don't think I will. Richard's face flushed crimson. This is my office, my employee, my business. You can't just walk in here. And she said, no. Moretti cut across him, his voice suddenly sharp, slicing through Richard's bluster. I heard her from outside this door. She said, please don't. She said, let me go. You didn't stop. You're misunderstanding the situation. Am I? Moretti took a deliberate step closer to Richard, his gaze like a weapon. Because it looks like you had a woman trapped against your desk. Looks like she was trying to get away. Looks like you locked the door so no one would interrupt. What was your plan here, Bennett? What exactly were you going to do to her? That's none of your damn business. Richard stammered, cornered. We have an agreement. Territories, partnerships. You can't come in here making accusations. Our agreement, Moretti's voice dropped, a silken threat, does not include protection for predators. She's my assistant. This is between us. Not anymore. Moretti's words hung in the air, cold as steel. As of right now, she's under my protection, which means she's untouchable. You've got 30 seconds to explain why I shouldn't break every bone in your hands for touching her without permission. Richard Rick Bennett, his face slick with sweat, laughed. A high-pitched, almost hysterical sound. You're insane. Actually insane. You're going to start a war over some assistant? My people won't stand for this. Then your people are welcome to take it up with me. Dante Moretti's phone was a blur in his hand. He typed, then spoke a rapid-fire string of Italian into the receiver before snapping his gaze back to Bennett. I just canceled our meeting, told my people we have a situation that needs handling. They'll be here in 10 minutes. What situation? Richard's voice was climbing, each word higher than the last. There's no situation. This is ridiculous. You're seriously making an issue out of this over some woman? Moretti's voice dropped, soft as a velvet shroud, dangerous as a whisper in a dark alley. Watch how you talk about her. She has a name. What is it? Julia Martinez, her voice a tremor, answered her own question. Julia Martinez. Dante repeated the name, tasting it, memorizing it, as if carving it into stone. Julia Martinez. How long has he been doing this to you, Julia? The truth spilled from her, hot and fast. 8 months since I started working here. Comments at first, then touching. Tonight, The words snagged in her throat. She couldn't finish. The air grew heavy, thick with the unsaid. Moretti's eyes, dark and unblinking, fixed on Richard. Tonight, he crossed a line he can't come back from. You put your hands on her against her will, in your office, where she has to work every day, where she felt trapped because you control her employment, her insurance, her livelihood. You used your position of power to assault her. I didn't assault anyone. Richard was visibly shaking now, the sweat beading on his forehead. This is consensual. She's been flirting with me for months. That's not true. Julia's voice found its strength, thin but steady. I've been trying to avoid you, trying to stay professional. But you're my boss. You control everything. I need this job. I need the insurance for my mother's treatment. So I stayed quiet because I was scared. Richard pointed a triumphant finger at her, smirking. See, she admitted it. She needs the job. It's complicated. These workplace relationships are always complicated. There's no relationship. Moretti's voice was ice. There's a man in power abusing an employee who's financially trapped. That's not complicated, Bennett. That's criminal. Criminal? Richard laughed again, the sound hollow, nervous. You want to talk about criminal? You're Dante Moretti, a made man in the Moretti family. You kill people for a living. You run protection rackets and smuggling operations. And you're going to lecture me about criminal behavior? Yes. Dante's single word was a hammer blow. Because even in my world, we have rules. We don't hurt civilians. We don't prey on the vulnerable. We don't use power to force ourselves on people who can't defend themselves. What you did tonight, what you've been doing for months, that violates every code I live by. This is ridiculous. You're being ridiculous. Richard spluttered, desperate. She's fine. Nothing happened. And even if something had happened, it's none of your concern. We have business deals, Moretti, territory agreements. My associates won't take kindly to you interfering in my personal affairs. Then your associates are welcome to take it up with me. Dante's phone was out again. But before they do, they should know that I'm terminating all agreements as of now. All partnerships, all territory arrangements. Everything we've built is done because I don't do business with men like you. You can't do that. Richard's voice cracked, raw with panic. We have contracts, agreements with your family and mine. You can't just watch me. Dante, already typing, didn't spare him a glance. I'm telling Volkov right now that his associate assaulted a woman in what I consider my territory. That I'm officially taking her under my protection, that any retaliation against her will be considered an act of war against my family. My territory? Julia, finding her voice again, felt a fresh wave of confusion. What do you mean, your territory? Dante finally looked at her, a faint smile touching his lips. This building, this company, I own 40% of it. Bennett here is a silent partner, handles the books, laundered money for his Russian friends. He didn't tell you that part, did he? Julia's stomach plummeted. This company, the job she'd worked so hard to get, the legitimate corporate position she'd been so proud of. It was all a front for a criminal enterprise. Money laundering? And Richard, you work for the Russians. She stared at Bennett, who was backing slowly towards his desk. You're a mob business consultant? I consult for various international clients, Richard stammered, his eyes darting wildly. He cleans dirty money, Dante cut in, stripping away the euphemism. His clients are Bratva, Russian organized crime. He's been using this company, and you, and everyone else here, as cover for years. You had no idea, did you? No. Julia felt a profound sickness rising in her. I thought this was a legitimate company, a legitimate job. I just wanted to work to support my mother. I didn't know." "Of course you didn't." Dante's voice softened, almost tender, as he spoke to her. "You're a civilian. You were never supposed to know. Bennett kept you in the dark specifically so you couldn't cause problems." He turned back to Richard, his dark eyes now like flint. "But now she knows, and now I know what kind of man you really are. So here's how this is going to work. Julia is quitting effective immediately. You're going to pay her 6 months severance. You're going to continue her health insurance for a year. You're going to provide excellent references, and you're never going to contact her again." "You can't make those demands," Richard protested weakly. "I absolutely can," Dante replied, his voice chillingly calm, "because the alternative is that I tell Volkov exactly what you did tonight. And despite what you might think, the Bratva doesn't appreciate men who assault women. Bad for business. Draws attention, makes enemies. Volkov will throw you to the wolves to protect his operations. So yes, Richard, I can make those demands, and you're going to meet them. I'll deny everything. It's her word against mine." Richard tried to sound confident, but a tremor ran through him. "Is it?" Dante pulled out his phone, holding it aloft. The screen glowed. "I've been recording since I walked in. Every word you said, every admission, every threat. I've got you admitting to months of harassment, admitting to trapping her in here tonight, admitting to using her job as leverage. This recording goes to Volkov, unless you do exactly what I say." Richard's face drained of color, going utterly white. You can't." "I already did." Dante pocketed the phone. 6 months severance, 1 year's insurance, references, and you stay away from Julia Martinez for the rest of your life. Do we have an understanding?" "Fine." Richard sank heavily into his desk chair, defeated. "Fine. Whatever. Just, this is going to cause problems with the partnership with Volkov." "That's your problem." Dante turned to Julia, his expression softening once more. "Get your things. I'm taking you out of here." "My things are at my desk," Julia whispered. She was trembling, a mix of adrenaline, shock, and the bewildering realization that her entire life had just been upended in 15 minutes. I'll have someone pack up your desk and deliver everything to you. Right now, we're leaving, before Bennett changes his mind or does something stupid." Dante held out his hand. "Come with me, Julia." Every instinct screamed for her to resist, to be suspicious of this beautiful, dangerous stranger who had just detonated her world, to question why a Mafia boss would help her, to worry about trading one perilous situation for another. But Dante had stopped Richard when no one else had believed her when she told the truth, had threatened a war with the Russian mob to protect her. And his hand, extended to her, looked like the first safe thing she'd seen in 8 months. Julia took his hand, let him pull her to her feet, let him guide her past Richard, who sat slumped, a ruin in his chair. Let him lead her out of the office, where she'd endured 8 months of harassment and fear. The hallway was empty, eerily silent, everyone else long gone. Dante kept her hand folded in his as they walked to the elevator, his grip firm, comforting. He didn't let go, even as the doors glided shut, enclosing them in a sudden, quiet intimacy. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low and gentle, as if he truly cared about her answer. "I don't know." The honesty of her reply surprised even her. "I don't know what I am right now. Terrified, relieved, unemployed. A hysterical laugh bubbled up. I just lost my job, and my insurance, and my mother's. No. Dante's voice was firm, resolute. You didn't lose anything. I'm going to make sure Bennett follows through on everything I demanded. 6 months severance, 1 year's insurance. You'll have time to find something else. Something legitimate. Something safe. Why are you doing this? Julia looked up at him, studying his chiseled profile. You don't know me. I'm nobody. Why would you risk your business deals for me? Because I saw what he was doing to you. Because I heard you begging him to stop. Because no woman should have to choose between her safety and her mother's health care. Dante's dark eyes held hers, unwavering. Because I can help, and not helping would make me complicit. But starting problems with the Russians, that's... Julia shook her head, fear chilling her again. That's dangerous for you. Let me worry about the Russians. You worry about you, about what you need, about healing from 8 months of trauma. Dante squeezed her hand gently, a silent promise. I've got resources, Julia. I've got money and lawyers and connections. I can protect you from Bennett and from any fallout. But I need to know, do you want that protection, or do you want to handle this yourself? I don't know how to handle this myself. I barely understand what just happened. Tears threatened again, blurring his face. I just know that you stopped him, that you believed me, that you cared when everyone else at this company looked the other way for 8 months. Then let me help. Dante pulled out his phone again, already moving. I'm going to make some calls. Get you somewhere safe for tonight. Tomorrow we figure out next steps. But right now, you need to not be alone. Not after what almost happened. I can go home. She tried to sound more confident than she felt. Where's home? Washington Heights. Small apartment. Julia didn't mention the threadbare curtains, the tiny kitchen, the unreliable locks, or the way the faint scent of mildew clung to everything. Too far and too exposed if Bennett decides to cause trouble. Dante was already typing. I'm taking you to my place. Guest room, locked door, security system. You'll be safe there until we know how this is going to play out. My place. Julia should protest, should insist on going home. The first rule of survival, never go to a stranger's apartment. Julia knew this, yet here she was, following the imposing figure of Dante through the hushed, opulent lobby. My sister and mother would kill me if I left you alone tonight after what you went through, he'd said, his voice a low rumble, cutting through the adrenaline still singing in her veins. Please, let me do this. Let me make sure you're safe. And what choice did she have? The elevator chimed, depositing them on the ground floor. Security guards, stiff in their tailored uniforms, offered Dante knowing nods as he guided her past them, out into the cool Manhattan night. A sleek black SUV idled at the curb. Marco, a tower of professional muscle, materialized from the driver's seat. Dante's rapid-fire Italian, a language she didn't grasp but understood through its urgency, was met with a crisp nod from Marco. The rear door swung open. Julia slid inside. Dante followed, the heavy door thudding shut behind them. As Marco navigated the city's arteries, Julia watched the blurred lights of Manhattan, a kaleidoscope mirroring the shattering pieces of her old life. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to an exclusive Tribeca building, a fortress of limestone and polished glass. A doorman, a marble lobby, and an elevator that demanded a key card. This was a world entirely alien to Julia. Dante's penthouse, when they finally reached it, was a brutalist symphony of wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows framing the insomniac city, exposed brick walls, and furniture that whispered comfort rather than shouted it. The guest room is this way. Dante's voice was softer now, a stark contrast to the coiled tension she'd sensed earlier. He led her down a quiet hallway, opening a door to a room larger than her entire apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the space, bathed in the muted glow from the city outside. Bathroom through there. Everything you need should be in the closet and drawers. I'll have Marco bring you some clothes in the morning. For tonight, there's a robe and comfortable things. Julia stood, adrift in the vastness of the room. You don't have to do all this. You already did enough. More than enough. Dante paused at the door, his silhouette framed against the softer light of the hallway. I know I don't have to, but I want to. Get some rest, Julia. Lock the door if it makes you feel safer. I'll be down the hall if you need anything. He was gone before she could form a reply, leaving a silence that pressed in around her. After a long moment, she locked the door. The bathroom was a sanctuary of marble and polished chrome. She found a plush robe hanging behind the door, its silk cool against her skin. The shower's scalding spray washed away not just Richard's touch, but the lingering tendrils of fear and adrenaline, leaving her feeling almost human again. Stepping out, wrapped in the weighty comfort of the robe, she found her phone on the bedside table, a relic from a life now irrevocably altered. 3 missed calls from Richard. She blocked him without a second thought. A soft knock startled her. Julia, Dante's voice, a low rumble through the heavy wood. Just me. Brought you some tea and food, if you're hungry. She hesitated, then unlocked the door. Dante stood there, a tray balanced in his hands. A steaming teapot, a delicate cup, a plate of understated sandwiches, and a bowl of vibrant fruit. Thought you might not have eaten dinner. He offered the tray. You should eat something. Keep your strength up. Thank you. Julia took the tray, placing it on a sleek dresser. Her gaze searched his. Dante, can I ask you something? Anything. His eyes were steady, unblinking. Earlier, you said you own 40% of that company, that it's your territory. She wrapped her arms around herself, a sudden chill raising goosebumps on her skin. What does that mean exactly? What are you? A fractional pause. Then the words came, hard and unvarnished. I'm a capo in the Moretti crime family. I run protection rackets, oversee certain business interests, both legitimate and not, and handle territorial agreements with other organizations. I'm what people politely call a businessman, and what everyone else calls a mobster. Julia's breath hitched. And you are meeting with Richard because he's one of many people who use our services to clean money. He pays us. We allow him to operate. It's business. Dante paused again, his gaze hardening. Or it was business. After tonight, that arrangement is done. Because of me? Her voice was barely a whisper. Because you protected me? Dante's jaw tightened. Because he's a predator who violated every rule of civilization. I didn't terminate our arrangement specifically because of you. I terminated it because I won't do business with men like Bennett. He met her eyes, a dangerous glint within them. But yes, I'm willing to start problems with the Brada over what he did to you, because some things matter more than business deals. Why? Julia couldn't reconcile the words with the man. Why would you risk so much for someone you don't even know? His answer came without hesitation. Because I have a sister. Because I have a mother. Because I know what men like Bennett are capable of when no one stops them. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. I'm not a good man by most standards, Julia. I do terrible things. I hurt people, but I have rules. Women are protected, always. Children are protected, always. Civilians don't get caught in our business, always. What Bennett was doing to you? That breaks every rule I have. So yes, I'm willing to risk problems with the Russians. I'm willing to burn business relationships. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure he never touches you or anyone else again. You barely know me, she argued, a tremor in her voice. How do you know I'm telling the truth? How do you know I didn't encourage him, like he said? Because I heard you. Because I saw your face. His expression softened, just barely. Because I've seen enough violence and fear to recognize them. You're not lying, Julia. I know you're not. And even if there was any ambiguity, which there isn't, I'd still choose to believe you. Because that's what we should do when someone says they're being hurt. We believe them, and we stop it. Tears pricked at Julia's eyes again. No one believed me. I tried to hint to HR. They said I was being too sensitive, that I should understand Richard is just old school, that I was making things difficult. They failed you. Dante's voice was gentle, a quiet fury beneath it. Your company failed you. Your HR department failed you. Everyone who saw what was happening and did nothing failed you. But I'm not going to fail you, Julia. I promise you that. What happens now? The question was raw, laced with panic. I can't go back to work there. Can't see Richard again. But I need a job. Need insurance? Need to pay rent. Her voice cracked. My mother's treatment. She needs her medication, her doctor appointments. I can't afford any of it without my job. Then we make sure you have what you need. Dante pulled out his phone, his movements decisive. I'm going to have my lawyer contact Bennett first thing Monday morning. Get the severance and insurance continuation in writing. Make it legally binding. You'll have 6 months of pay, 1 year of insurance. Time to figure out your next step. He met her gaze. And after that, when the money runs out, by then you'll have a new job. Something legitimate, something safe. I have connections, Julia. Businesses that need talented people. I'll make introductions. Help you find something that doesn't come with men like Bennett attached. He pocketed his phone. You're not going to end up homeless or without insurance. I'm going to make sure of that. Why? Julia asked again, compelled by the sheer, bewildering scope of his commitment. Why are you doing all this? Because I can. A simple, irrefutable truth. And because you deserve help. And because... Dante hesitated, his gaze briefly distant, before snapping back to hers. Because seeing you scared in that office did something to me. Made me protective in a way I haven't felt in a long time. And I don't ignore those instincts anymore. When something tells me to help someone, I help them. No questions, no expectations, just help. Julia looked at this stranger, this dangerous man who ran criminal enterprises and spoke of violence, yet who had upended his own world to protect hers. This contradiction, clad in an expensive suit, an Italian accent softening his harsh words, promising safety as if it were his to deliver. Thank you. It was inadequate, a whisper against the storm. It's not enough. could never be enough. But it's all I have. Thank you for believing me, for stopping him, for all of this. You're welcome. Dante moved toward the door. Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning. Lock the door if you want. You're safe here, Julia. I promise you that. He left, the click of the door echoing the finality of their conversation. Julia locked the door. Then, driven by a sudden, ravenous hunger, she ate the sandwiches, every bite tasting of impossible relief. She drank the tea, its warmth spreading through her chilled body, and finally climbed into the most comfortable bed she had ever known. Sleep claimed her faster than she thought possible, after everything. The nightmares came just after 3 a.m. Julia woke with a gasp, the phantom weight of Richard's hands on her, his voice a chilling echo, the crushing certainty of the desk against her back. Her heart hammered against her ribs in the unfamiliar room. Tears streamed down her face. A soft knock came then. Julia, Dante's voice, a lifeline in the darkness. I heard you. Are you okay? She should have said yes, should have told him to leave, to handle it herself. But the single word that escaped her lips was no, I'm not okay. Can I come in? Yes. The door opened. Dante stood there in pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair ruffled from sleep, concern etched on his face, even in the dim light. Bad dream. Julia nodded, a knot in her throat making speech impossible. Dante moved to the edge of the bed, not crowding her, but close enough for his presence to be a solid comfort. About tonight? About Bennett? Yes. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. I can't stop thinking about what almost happened. What would have happened if you hadn't walked in? If you'd been 5 minutes later? But I wasn't. Dante's voice was gentle, firm. I was exactly on time. I walked in exactly when I needed to. And you're safe now. He's not going to hurt you again, Julia. I promise you that. How can you promise that? She whispered, disbelief thick in her voice. You can't watch me every second, can't protect me from everything. What if he comes after me? What if he decides the money and insurance aren't enough? What if? Then I handle it permanently. Dante's tone was calm, chillingly matter-of-fact. I told you I don't make idle threats. If Bennett comes near you, if he tries anything, he won't walk away from it. Do you understand what I'm saying? You'd kill him. It was not a question, but a stark, undeniable statement. Without hesitation, without regret. Dante met her gaze, his eyes unflinching. I know that probably makes me a monster in your eyes, but I've spent my whole life in a world where violence is sometimes the only language people understand. Bennett is that kind of person. He only understands consequences. So, if he forces my hand, I'll give him consequences he can't ignore. You're not a monster. Julia surprised herself by believing it. The words caught in Julia's throat, a frantic bird seeking release. You're someone who protects people, who stops bad things from happening. Her gaze pleaded with him, searching for absolution. That's not monstrous. That's just... She struggled, the raw edge of emotion catching. Necessary sometimes. A shaky breath. Most people wouldn't see it that way. Most people haven't been where I was tonight. Haven't felt that helpless, that trapped. Her voice cracked, a fragile porcelain chime. You gave me back power I thought I'd lost. That's not monstrous. That's heroic. Dante moved slowly, deliberately, his hand reaching out, offering ample space for her to recoil. She didn't. His fingers, surprisingly gentle, brushed the tear tracks from her face. "You're very brave, Julia. You know that, don't you? Most people, after what you went through, they'd fall apart. But you're here. You're talking. You're processing. That takes incredible strength." "I don't feel strong," she whispered, the confession a stark contrast to his words. "I feel terrified and angry and relieved all at once." "That's normal," Dante affirmed, his hand retreating to his lap, the warmth of his touch lingering. "That's healthy, even. It's going to take time to feel safe again. Time to trust that this is real, that you're actually okay. But I promise you, Julia, you are okay. And you're going to stay okay. I'm going to make sure of it." "Why?" she asked again, the question a persistent undercurrent. "I still don't understand why you care so much." A long silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken histories. Then Dante spoke, his voice a low, gravelly confession. "When I was 16, my cousin, Maria, was assaulted by one of my father's associates. She told him what happened. My father, he did nothing, said it was complicated, said the associate was valuable, said Maria must have misunderstood." He exhaled slowly, the memory a ghost in the room. "She killed herself 3 months later, and I've carried that guilt every day since. The guilt that I didn't do more, that I didn't protect her when she needed protecting." His eyes met hers, dark and resolute. "So when I saw you tonight, when I saw what Bennett was doing, there was no universe where I was going to walk away. Not again. Never again." Fresh tears welled in Julia's eyes. "I'm so sorry about your cousin, about what happened to her." "Me too." Dante stood, his frame filling the doorway with a quiet authority. "But I can't change the past. All I can do is make different choices now, better choices. And that means making sure you're safe, making sure Bennett faces consequences, making sure no one else gets hurt the way Maria was hurt. Thank you for telling me that, for trusting me with it." Julia's voice was barely a whisper. "Thank you for letting me help, for accepting protection instead of trying to handle everything alone." Dante moved toward the door, a silhouette against the hall light. "Try to get some sleep. I'll be right down the hall if you need anything. And Julia, the door is unlocked. You're safe to leave anytime you want. You're not a prisoner here. You're a guest, an honored guest." "I know." And somehow, amidst the lingering fear and the fresh grief, she truly did. She trusted it. "I'll try to sleep." He left. Julia lay back down, and despite the phantom clutch of nightmares, despite everything that had transpired, she slept. For the first time in 8 months, a genuine sense of safety enveloped her. Sunlight, a defiant golden promise, streamed through unfamiliar windows, pulling her from a deep, dreamless sleep. Disorientation flickered, brief and unsettling, before memory flooded back. Richard, Dante, the horror and the hesitant hope, the 3 a.m. conversation, Dante's haunting story of Maria. She rose, finding clothes laid out with an unexpected thoughtfulness, jeans and a soft sweater, precisely her size. Someone had shopped for her while the city slept. Dressed, she ventured from the bedroom, drawn by the scent of coffee. Dante stood in the kitchen, a mug in his hand. He wore jeans and a black Henley, a casual foil to the previous night's tailored suit, yet no less imposing. "Good morning," he greeted, his gaze meeting hers. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected." Julia slid onto a stool at the kitchen island. "You didn't have to buy me clothes." Marco picked up a few things, Dante replied, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Thought you might want something that wasn't yesterday's work clothes. Coffee, please. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the clink of ceramic. Then Dante spoke, his voice low but precise. I called my lawyer this morning. He's already contacted Bennett's people. They're drafting the severance agreement. You should have it by Monday afternoon. That fast? A flicker of something dark, dangerous, crossed his features. When you make it clear that non-compliance means war with my family, people tend to move quickly. He took a slow sip. Bennett's scared, Julia. He knows he made a mistake. He knows his Russian friends won't protect him from consequences. He'll do what we demanded. And the Russians? Are they going to cause problems for you? Probably. But that's my problem, not yours. I've been dealing with Brada politics for years. I know how to handle them. He shrugged, a gesture of casual dismissal that belied the weight of his words. By starting a war, by making it very clear that what Bennett did is unacceptable and that I won't tolerate it in my territory. He leaned forward slightly. They'll bluster, make threats, maybe try some minor retaliation, but ultimately they'll back down because I'm offering them a choice. They can sacrifice one predatory associate who's been causing problems anyway, or they can go to war with the Moretti family over someone nobody likes. It's an easy choice. You make it sound simple. It is simple. When you have leverage and you're not afraid to use it, most situations are simple. Dante set down his mug. The complicated part is figuring out what happens next for you. What do you mean? I mean, you can't go back to your apartment. Not until we're sure Bennett isn't going to try something stupid. And you can't just sit here in my penthouse indefinitely. So, we need a plan. What kind of plan? Short term, you stay here. A few days, maybe a week, until the legal paperwork is done and we're sure Bennett is falling in line. Long term, we find you a job. Something safe, something legitimate, somewhere you can use your actual skills without worrying about harassment. My actual skills are executive assistant work, Julia interjected, a tired note in her voice. That's all I've done since college. What did you study in college? Business administration, minor in graphic design. She shrugged again. But I never did anything with the design part. Just took assistant jobs because they paid the bills. Design? Dante's expression shifted, a new energy sparking in his eyes. Interesting. Do you have a portfolio? Not really. Some old projects from school. Nothing recent. Could you put one together with time and resources? Maybe. I don't know. Why? Because I know people. Legitimate people who run design firms and marketing companies and businesses that need creative talent. If you've got skill in that area, I can make introductions. Get you in front of people who might actually appreciate what you can do. You do that? Help me get a real career? I told you I'm going to make sure you land on your feet. Part of that is making sure you have more options than just another assistant job where you might end up in the same situation. Dante stood, the unspoken promise solidifying. So yes, I'll help you. I'll open doors. The rest is up to you. Something shifted in Julia's chest, a brittle barrier cracking under the weight of gratitude, and something else, something dangerously akin to hope. Why are you being so nice to me? Because you deserve nice, after 8 months of the opposite. Dante moved toward the hallway. I have some work to handle. make yourself at home. There's food in the kitchen, TV, books, whatever you need. We'll talk more this afternoon." He disappeared, leaving Julia in his pristine kitchen, sipping expensive coffee, wrestling with the impossible reality that her life had been utterly, irrevocably transformed in less than 24 hours. The next few days blurred into a strange, suspended animation. Julia inhabited Dante's lavish penthouse, slept in the guest room, ate the meticulous meals he or Marco provided. Dante, a presence both watchful and distant, gave her boundless space, checking in with a quiet question rather than a demand. He understood her need for solitude, for the hushed processing of trauma. On Monday, the severance agreement arrived. 6 months' pay, a year of continued insurance, a glowing reference letter already prepped, all legally binding. Dante's lawyer, a sharp-eyed man named Mr. Giancarlo, reviewed everything, confirmed its legitimacy. Julia signed. And just like that, she was free from Richard Bennett, with a financial security she hadn't known in her adult life. Tuesday morning, Dante sat her down with his laptop, gently prompting her to show him her design, work old college projects, things she'd created for sheer pleasure over the years. He examined each image with a genuine, discerning interest. "You're good," he declared, the certainty in his voice striking. "Really good. You should have been doing this instead of fetching coffee for him. I know someone. Runs a boutique design firm in Soho. They're looking for a junior designer. I can get you an interview. Just like that, you can just get me an interview. I can make an introduction. What happens after that is up to you and your talent." Dante handed back the laptop. "But yes, I can open that door." Wednesday, Julia had the interview. The firm, compact and elegant, specialized in high-end interior design. Catherine, the owner, a woman with keen eyes and an even keener aesthetic, scanned Julia's portfolio and saw something she liked. She offered Julia the position. Junior designer, solid pay, real benefits, work she could finally enjoy. Julia accepted, set to start the following Monday. For the first time in years, she felt a thrill, not dread, at the prospect of going to work. 2 weeks after the night with Richard, Julia moved out of Dante's penthouse. She found a brighter apartment in a safer neighborhood, one Dante had helped her locate, one whose security deposit he'd insisted on covering despite her protests. They stayed in touch. Dante would call, a brief check-in, ensuring she was settling into her new role, that Richard hadn't stirred, that she lacked nothing. Gradually, subtly, something shifted between them. The dynamic of protector and protected softened, evolving into something more equal, more mutual. They'd meet for coffee, for dinner, for long, meandering walks through Central Park on Sunday afternoons. Julia learned about Dante's world growing up in a crime family, grappling with his father's early death, inheriting responsibilities he hadn't been prepared for, the chilling weight of leading an organization where one wrong decision could cost lives. In turn, Dante learned about Julia's life, her single mother, 3 jobs, college funded by relentless work, the raw guilt and fear of watching her mother's battle with cancer. The last bell of Julia's mother's chemotherapy treatment still rang in her ears a month after that night in Richard's office. Remission. The word, a fragile triumph, unspooled from the doctor's lips, and Julia wept. Dante. He was the only one she wanted to tell. His number was a reflex in her trembling fingers. Dinner, an unspoken celebration, found them nestled in the hushed elegance of a midtown eatery, crystal clinking softly. Across the table, between sips of wine and shared laughter over nothing and everything, a startling realization bloomed in Julia's chest during dessert. Feelings, real ones, the kind that twisted a knot of fear and exhilaration inside her. "I need to tell you something," she blurted, before courage could waver. "Something I've been thinking about." Dante, ever watchful, lowered his wine glass. "Okay, I'm listening. I have feelings for you, romantic feelings." The words rushed out, self-deprecating. "I know it's probably a terrible idea. I know I'm probably just confused, or a trauma response. You saved me, and I'm grateful. Maybe I'm confusing gratitude with attraction." A sharp intake of breath. "But I don't think I'm confused. I think I actually have feelings for you. Real ones." Silence stretched, taut and charged, Dante's dark eyes unwavering. Then he leaned forward, bridging the space between them. "I have feelings for you too. Have had them since that first night. Probably before I should have. Probably while I was still just supposed to be protecting you." "Really?" Julia's heart hammered. "You're not just saying that?" "I don't just say things." His hand reached across the polished wood, warm and strong, finding hers. "You're smart and strong. You survived something that would have broken countless others. You're building a career, caring for your mother, living your life. And somehow, in the midst of that chaos, you still smile at me like I'm just a man, not what everyone else sees. How could I not have feelings for you?" "What does that mean?" she whispered, looking at their joined hands. "For us?" "It means," Dante's thumb stroked her knuckles, a feather-light touch igniting a spark. "If you want this, if you want to see where this goes, I'm all in. I'm possessive. I'm probably going to be overprotective. My life is complicated, and at times, dangerous." His gaze hardened slightly, a promise. "But I will never be Richard. I will never use my position to pressure you. I will never make you afraid. Your consent, your choice, your autonomy, those are sacred to me. Do you understand?" "I understand," Julia affirmed, squeezing his hand. "And I want this. I want to see where this goes." "Then we take it slow," he said, his voice a low rumble. "We build something real, not based on gratitude or trauma or obligation, but on actual connection, on choice, on mutual respect." A slow smile touched his lips, transforming his austere features. "And I take you home now and kiss you goodnight properly. Because I've been wanting to kiss you for weeks, but I was waiting for you to be ready." "I'm ready," Julia breathed, her voice a silken thread. "I'm very ready." He settled the bill, drove her through the city's shimmering avenues, and walked her to her apartment door. The kiss was gentle, careful, an invitation more than a demand. Julia leaned into it, letting herself feel wanted without the familiar shadow of threat, desired without fear. When they finally broke apart, both a little breathless, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to take very good care of you, Julia Martinez, in every way, for as long as you'll let me." "I'm going to hold you to that," Julia smiled, her voice thick with emotion. "Because I'm keeping you, Dante Moretti. You saved me. Now you're stuck with me. Best decision I ever made." His lips found hers again, a soft sigh mingling with the kiss. "Stopping Bennett, protecting you, falling for you, all of it. Best decision I ever made." 3 months later, the world had reshaped itself for Julia. Her new design firm job was everything she'd dreamed. Her mother, robust and healthy. Her apartment, a haven. And Dante, possessive, protective, yet undeniably dangerous Dante, who looked at her as if she were the center of his universe. Richard Bennett had vanished. He'd slipped out of New York one night, a phantom, the whispered rumors placing him somewhere in Florida, living under an assumed name, too terrified to ever return to Manhattan. Julia didn't care where he was, as long as he stayed away. The Bratva had grumbled, their threats a low thrum that eventually faded when Dante calmly made his case. No one wanted a war over one predatory associate who brought nothing but trouble. Peace held. Business continued. Life for Julia surged forward, free, safe, and deeply loved by the man who'd risked everything to protect her when she needed it most. One evening, in the quiet expanse of his penthouse, Julia sketched designs at the sprawling dining table while Dante worked nearby on his laptop. The comfortable silence, their easy companionship, had become a rhythm she cherished. "Can I ask you something?" Julia laid down her stylus, a question bubbling to the surface. "Something I've been wondering." "Anything." Dante closed his laptop, his gaze, once cold, now warm with a fierce protection, fixed on her. "That night, when you walked into Richard's office, what were you going to do if he'd actually hurt me? If you'd been too late?" "I would have killed him." The words were delivered calmly, factually, as if discussing the weather. Not quickly, not cleanly, but definitively. "And then I would have gone to war with the Bratva, if necessary, to ensure no one retaliated against you." He paused, his dark eyes searching hers. "Does that frighten you?" "It should." "It should," Julia confessed, moving from her chair to sit beside him. "It should frighten me that you're so capable of violence that you'd kill someone, start a war. But it doesn't. No. Because that violence wasn't about ego or power. It was about stopping someone who was hurting me, about protecting someone who couldn't protect herself, about choosing to do the right thing, even when it was complicated and dangerous." Dante pulled her onto his lap, his arms encircling her. "You see me clearly. You always have. From that first night, you saw past the reputation to who I actually am. That's rare, Julia. That's precious." "You see me clearly, too," she countered, touching his face, mapping the strong lines of his jaw. "You saw me when everyone else looked away. You believed me when no one else would. You stopped him when stopping him meant risking everything. How could I not love you?" Love. The word, a soft whisper, hung in the air. Dante's eyes deepened, searching hers, seeking and finding. "You love me. I love you." It felt easy, natural, true. "I've probably loved you since that first night. Since you said, 'Touch her again, and I'll break every finger.' Since you chose me over business deals and peace treaties. Since you made me feel safe for the first time in 8 months. I love you too." Dante's voice was rough, an emotional tremor she'd never heard. "Julia Martinez, with everything I am, you're mine in the best way. The way that means I'm yours, too." Their kiss was slow, deep, a silent promise, sealing the space between them. And Julia, who had survived harassment and assault, the worst a man could do, had found something beautiful with another man, the most dangerous man in Manhattan. The one who had saved her, the one who had believed her, the one who loved her. Sometimes, she thought, as Dante carried her to his bedroom, sometimes the person who saves you is exactly the person you were meant to find. And sometimes, being protected by a dangerous man is simply being loved by the right man. Thank you for reading. And remember, the people truly worth keeping are the ones who believe you, especially when you need that belief most.